hundreds of schools across the country have had to close buildings over dodgy concrete that's left them in danger of collapse. It's become a full-blown crisis for the government and an early Christmas present for fans of lazy metaphors. Critics say this government's crumbling before our eyes. The walls are falling in after 13 years of Tory rule. They failed to fix the roof while the sun was shining. We don't yet know why it took so long for the government to act. We don't yet know how long it will take to fix it. We don't yet know how much that will cost. But what we do know is that absolutely nobody is to blame. Here's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak accused of cutting school budgets when he was Chancellor.
Are you to blame for what's happening now? Do you want to apologise to parents and pupils?
No, I think that is completely and utterly wrong.
Not me, Gov, says the Prime Minister. Gillian Keegan, Secretary of State for Education, first said it was, quote, not her responsibility, before blowing up in this hot mic tirade.
But you're saying that the government is not responsible, ultimately, for the safety of children in schools?
The school building's responsibility is with local authorities and multi-academy trusts.
Does anyone ever say, you know what, you've done a good job because everyone else has sat on their and done nothing? No signs of that, no?
Everybody else was sat on their arses, says the Education Chief, who was sat on her arse on holiday in Spain when the school closures were ordered. Well, today her department triumphantly tweeted, most schools unaffected. Well, that's great news. At least we know the line after the election. 40% of Tories lose their seats, most unaffected. This crisis has exposed a phobia that's gripping politicians around the world. It's the fear of taking responsibility or saying sorry for anything. President Biden said it was, quote, not his responsibility when classified documents were found piled in his garage next to his beloved Corvette. Asked if he'd take responsibility if the Taliban retook Afghanistan, Biden said this.
Don't you bear some responsibility for the outcome if the Taliban ends up back in control and women end up losing the rights?
No, I don't. Look, do I bear responsibility? Zero responsibility.
And yet it was entirely your responsibility, Mr. President. Everybody knows what happened over in Afghanistan, the tragic consequences, not least for millions of Afghan women now being suppressed once again by the Taliban wolves. Boris Johnson infamously bore no responsibility for literally anything, including an investigation that found he'd lied to Parliament about COVID lockdown parties and launched a campaign of abuse against his critics. It was all a terrible witch hunt, he said. Donald Trump's the godfather of taking no responsibility, a former president who'd apparently rather go to jail than admit he lost an election. And a year ago today, Liz Truss became Prime Minister for a disastrous and historically awful 44 days. Her friend and Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng broke Britain with a mini budget that tanked the pound, crashed the markets, blew up mortgages for millions of people. Well, who bears that responsibility? Who's sorry? It's pretty clear that most people are now still paying the price. But apologies, there have been none. Trust in politics is at an all-time low because so few politicians just want to throw their hands up and go, it's on me, Gov, and I'm sorry. Every leader blames the guy who messed it up before them and the one who made it worse afterwards. Look, it's hard to admit you're wrong. Apparently, I've been told that. But if politicians want to rebuild trust, it starts with admitting they broke it in the first place and occasionally just saying, I'm sorry, it was me. Well, I'm joined now by the former Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng. Kwasi, great to see you.
How are you?
You've never said sorry for
what
happened a year ago, just over a year ago.
What I've said, I bear responsibility for it.
Why not say sorry?
And what I want to do is to make sure that we actually get back to a growth agenda.
What do you bear responsibility for?
Well, I think the way that we delivered it and the speed with which it was delivered was wrong. And I've put up my hand frequently and said we should have taken more time. We should have had a more balanced approach. And I've said that repeatedly in interviews, on television.
But I'm really curious why you've never been able to bring yourself to say the simple words, I'm sorry. After all the damage that was inflicted by that ruinous 44-day regime of Liz Truss, and I'm sure that you would say, and we'll come to this, a lot of it was on her.
No, I'm not here to apportion blame. I mean, that's one of the reasons why...
But if you take responsibility for causing...
That's one of the reasons why...
I get it. But if you take responsibility, why are you also not prepared to say sorry?
So I think it sounds like a lawyerly distinction, but I think there's a difference between saying I was responsible...
Sounds like a bit like a cowardly distinction.
No,
Kwasi.
because actually, a lot of the debate, and you've probably been following this, if you look at things like slavery and reparations and all of that is all about saying, I'm sorry. And in those instances, the people themselves weren't entirely responsible for stuff that happened 200 or 300 years ago.
I agree with you.
So what... In terms
I don't see why people today should be apologising for the behaviour of ancestors 300 years ago. But you were the guy.
No, but again, as in government, there are lots of different people, there are lots of different agencies, lots of different people who are involved. So it doesn't make any sense.
You were the chancellor.
It doesn't make any sense for someone like, for example, Gillian Keegan to say sorry when there's all of this stuff happened over many decades. And there were lots of things.
But
hang on. Let's talk about the mini budget.
Let's about you for a minute.
Let's talk about the mini budget.
Yeah.
There were lots of things that were going on. You say it crashed the pound. The Federal Reserve had put up interest rates, and the Japanese yen and the euro were at 50-year lows.
The main reason the pound, as you know, the main reason the pound tanked as rapidly as it did
for a week,
But
and then
the main reason
back,
the markets freaked because you had these billions and billions of unfunded tax cuts.
And where the straw that broke the camel's back was actually the gilts. It wasn't the currency market. It was actually the what we call the LDIs, long-term gilt market, where interest rates went up. And there was a run on that, and the bank intervened. My own view, I mean, I didn't sack myself. I wanted to stick it out and see it through. The Prime Minister took a different route.
But do you accept that what you did was a massive mistake?
So I think that the delivery of it was a mistake, left a lot to be desired.
Having 45 billion of tax cuts that haven't been funded, even to a sort of non-academic financial brain like mine, looked like lunacy.
No, but it was a straw that broke the camel's back. So she campaigned very clearly not to increase corporation tax during the leadership and to reverse the NI increase. And that was 35 billion. And where we went too far was probably in trying to get rid of the 45p rate. So the point about the reason I think principally it went wrong was that there was just too much in it.
But there was immediate harm to millions of people in the country.
It was a very turbulent.
Yeah, your turbulence.
Time. Definitely.
Yeah, your turbulence was another person's mortgage hell.
That. And I've also openly said that I was exposed, ironically enough, to that as well. I mean, lots of people.
So here's my question for you again. I'm really struggling.
I'm not going to come here and say wear a hair shirt and apologise and
why not
and say sorry.
Why not?
Because I want to look forward and I want to.
Well, I'm sure you do, but I want to look back. We're a year on.
I know you want to look back,
on.
But I don't think that's constructive.
But the reason I want to look back is Rishi Sunak was in competition with Liz Truss to be the Prime Minister at the time. And he warned, when she was talking about all these tax cuts she was going to do, he warned this.
So I don't think the responsible thing to do right now is launch into some unfunded spree of borrowing and more debt. That will just make inflation worse. It will make the problem longer.
Let's be clear. We have inflation because of our monetary policy, that we haven't been tough enough on the monetary supply. That's the way I would address that issue. Okay. But it is wrong.
Interest rates up, mortgages nightmare.
It is.
Liz, we have to be honest. We have to be honest. But borrowing your way out of inflation isn't a plan. It's a fairy tale.
Well, he was right.
I think he was right to an extent.
He was right completely.
No, because I think where she was right, where we were right, was identifying growth. And that will be an issue that you will have endless conversations with politicians in the next few years, because it's very unclear if you have a very high tax system, which we're currently in, how you get growth. I think where we went wrong, and I'm very happy to confess this, is there was just too much too quickly. I think if she'd done the measures she campaigned on, I think we'd have been okay. And of course, you've got to remember that this was on top of the energy intervention, which was cost billions.
No, listen, there were lots of other things going on.
So,
I'm not disputing that. I find it interesting that politicians today find it increasingly difficult to just say sorry.
So
when the consequences of their decisions and actions, you were Chancellor, she was the Prime Minister, when the direct consequences were felt immediately by millions of people in this country.
Think, as I said, I think there's a...
But why are you so implacably opposed to wearing the hair shirt?
Because then you just apologise for everything. I mean, literally, you would apologise.
No, you don't. There are many things I don't think people should apologise for.
Always. I mean, you are a moderate, reasonable person, but politicians were always being.
No one's called me that in years.
You got to apologise for this. You got to apologise for that.
Yeah, but were you the shortest living Chancellor in history?
Well, actually, Ian McLeod was, but that's a different.
Right, so you're the second shortest living Chancellor. Hang on.
Okay.
Shortest living Chancellor in history. She was one of the shortest shortest Prime Minister. 44 days of mayhem, right? She couldn't even outlast a lettuce. So on every metric of political life, putting aside everything else, the pair of you will go down in history, whether you like it or not, as disasters in that period, right? And I simply ask, given the magnitude...
So I'm not coming here to formally apologise.
Why not?
Sorry. What I am saying is
but wait,
that I
hang
was
on,
responsible.
all right.
And there were as you said.
I know you don't.
Said,
I know you don't want it. I'm just curious.
As you've said.
Kwasi, I'm curious. Why not?
And as you've said.
Why not?
There were lots and lots of other factors.
I know, but
and
Kwasi,
I actually happen to believe
Kwasi,
that what we were trying to do from a strategic point of view, trying to lower taxes and trying to make the country more productive and wealth creating was a good thing.
I know what you both believed, but it turned out you were both wrong.
No.
Catastrophically wrong.
The implementation was wrong. I accept that.
It was a disaster.
But I think the strategy was the right thing.
But again, I understand you don't want to apologise. My question is why?
Because I don't think that the strategy was the wrong strategy. I don't apologise for the strategy. I just think the implementation and the way in which it was delivered could have been improved massively. And I've freely accepted that.
You said it was a big mistake.
No, I said so there are two things. There's a strategic goal. I want to have a lower tax Britain, and there's a way you get there. Now, the way that the implementation we used, I think, left a lot to be desired. I think it was the wrong thing at the wrong time. We went too far.
Yes.
However, the strategy where we wanted to get to was absolutely
I'm
the right
sure,
thing.
but you know,
and that's an important thing. That's an important distinction.
It's fine, but the reality of your actions is that millions of people in this country suffered immediate financial harm. And to those, I don't want an apology from you, to me, but there are people watching this. Hang on, there are people watching this who went through genuine financial harm as a consequence of your actions. So don't apologise to me, but for them, I'm really curious why you would be prepared to look down the barrel of the camera on a show like this and not just say, I'm sorry for what happened.
What I would do is just say, we could have done things better.
But I'm not going
to apologise for the actual strategy.
You're sounding
I'm not apologising for the strategy. I think it was the right strategy, but the implementation was wrong.